What's up everyone, welcome back to the channel. Once again, another still worth it video, should you still buy a video, SWI, whatever you want to call it. And this time we're talking about a phone that actually the successor is being hyped up a ton. A lot of people are talking about the current iPhone 9 or the iPhone SE2 that's going to be released sometime in the next couple months. And it's going to be making waves and making storms, but let's not forget the original, the OG that kind of started this whole entire iPhone SE2 rumor, and obviously in the name, the iPhone SE. This is honestly one of the most favorited phones that have probably been released since its time frame. A lot of people, really praised Apple for releasing a budget smaller phone that kind of, didn't skip out on any of the bells and whistles of a phone, was a very basic phone at the end of the day. But when it was released, it was actually really perplexing because Apple decreased the price point of this phone yet still kept that same chipset and everything. And the iPhone SE was released in March of 2016, so in about 2 months it'll actually be turning 4 years old, which is pretty cool. Seeing phones like these currently get developed and still getting iOS versions and still being supported is really cool. And a 4-year-old phone, I mean, the design is kind of more dated. I mean, obviously, it has some bezel on it, and that's really one of the biggest downsides of this phone. However, what I will tell you is this phone still has a ton of life in it. And I'm doing another video about the iPhone SE, kind of about the iPhone SE later today, so and make sure you guys don't want to miss that one for sure. But looking on the front, you can see we have a 4-inch IPS panel. This one is 640p, and just like when it was released, there's really not too much to hate on it in terms of the display. It's a smaller panel, so even though it doesn't have the highest resolution, you really don't have that many inches in the display. First of all, so it's not like it's going to be super pixelated. It's not like it's a 640p display on a 6-inch panel, so the panel itself isn't, bad at all, but it also isn't like the craziest thing ever. Obviously, if you have like the iPhone 11 or something like that, that display will technically look better because it does have True Tone and it's just a better display. However, for the size and for the price and for the year it was released, it's not that bad. There weren't even any OLED iPhones yet when this thing was released, so I don't want to give it too much flack there. Of course, when you compare it to phones that we have nowadays, it's not the best looking panel, but really the only downside of the front of this phone, like I stated, is the amount of bezel that's on it. It does have quite a bit of bezel on it for, being a phone that, is still being sold in the used market quite a bit and people still hype up. But I think for a majority of people, if they're getting this phone, they don't really care about how much bezel it has or anything. They're just looking at it pure functional use, and functionality wise, it gets the job done for sure. On the bottom, we have a headphone jack as well as a lightning port, which is really cool. A lot of people still don't want to move away from that headphone jack, but you do have that capability with this phone, which is really cool, as well as that lightning port, which is awesome. On the back, you can see a single camera setup, and in terms of the design, I really do like this design a lot. I think it's pretty much held up throughout the years. Of course, like I stated, new phones are bezel-less and have way more quirks and features and all that stuff, but this phone has the core functionality, and I think it's a really cool thing that Apple did, refreshing the internals and keeping the external the same. I think at this time there weren't a lot of phones being bezel-less and pushing that narrative. Now we kind of have the exact opposite. But in terms of functionality and the way it looks, I still think this is one of the best designed iPhones of all time. It took it from the iPhone 5S, but regardless, the iPhone SE is still in the embodiment of that design, which I really like. Now, in terms of software, this thing was released with iOS 9.3.2. You are able to get iOS 13.3 on it currently. There might be another update coming soon. Who knows? There might even be one today. I honestly don't know. And in terms of software, I mean, it got a couple of versions of software, which is really cool. The thing is, though, is that I think the iPhone SE, first of all, when iOS 13 was coming out, there were rumors that Apple wasn't even going to support that. And I didn't know. I thought it might have. I thought it might not have. I mean, it was kind of in the middle. So in terms of that, that was kind of where I was leaving that. I think it was definitely getting iOS 13 for sure. I knew the iPhone 6S was definitely getting iOS 13, but in terms of that design, I wasn't sure if Apple was going to support the SE. And the reason I bring the 6S in here is because the 6S and the iPhone SE had the same exact chipset within, which is the Apple A9 chip. So that was one major thing right there, but regardless, the iPhone SE ended up getting iOS 13. Now the thing is that I think the 6S is probably going to be done here. I don't think Apple's going to keep supporting it. I could be totally wrong, I don't know. And thus by me thinking that the iPhone SE will inherently not get iOS 14 either, because the 6S and SE will probably end up getting the same software life cycles. So because of that, I honestly don't know. One thing to keep in mind is that Apple did push iOS 9.3.2 on the iPhone SE, so it didn't get exactly the iOS 9 update. It got, almost towards the end of iOS 9. So because of that, Apple may push to another version on this because of that. I honestly don't know. I know the SE and 6S can definitely support another version, even if it's a whole another UI refresh, but like I stated, I honestly don't know. But it's still getting software updates, so it's not a big deal for now up until, WWDC, and then we'll kind of get a better idea. However, what I will tell you is that a really cool thing that happened in the last couple months about specifically the iPhone SE, and it's not really a software thing as it is a hardware thing, and that is actually an unpatchable jailbreak. The checkra jailbreak actually gives you the ability to jailbreak any version of iOS on your iPhone SE, which is amazing. That's one of the biggest accomplishments that's been happening in the jailbreak community in the last couple months or even last couple years. So whatever version of iOS you have on your iPhone SE, you have that ability to jailbreak it, which, some people might not even care about it or anything, but there's a lot of different things you can do with a jailbroken iPhone SE that you can't necessarily even do on a brand new iPhone 11 Pro Max or something like that. So you kind of have to keep that in mind. There's some really, really cool advantages by doing that. And like I stated, whether you want to do it or not, you at least have that ability on the iPhone SE, so that's a humongous advantage right there. So in terms of software, I think you're going to be outdated. It's kind of too soon to say. We'll kind of get more details later on, in the next couple months, but you do have that jailbreak, whatever version of iOS you're on, which is really cool. Now, in terms of the performance side of things, this thing was released with the Apple A9 chip, which is the same as the iPhone 6s, a dual-core CPU. Now, there were 4 different models of the iPhone SE, a 16, 32, 64, 128 gig model. All those models had 2 gigabytes of RAM. Now, what I will tell you is do not get the 16 gigabyte variant. Don't even get the 32. Get at least the 64 or 128. That's kind of a given. That has nothing to do with the performance, but I just figured I would say that. But in terms of the performance, what I would tell you is this is kind of the same way I feel about the 6s, but I do think the SE is a little bit faster than the iPhone 6s. When I'm using the phone, it honestly surprises me how smooth the animations are when I'm opening apps, when I'm closing apps, when I'm flipping through the home screen. It seems pretty consistent, and I think that's something that this phone has that a lot of older, even Android phones do not have. When I'm opening apps, when I'm doing things, even like with my Galaxy S10 sometimes, when I'm opening an app, it just seems so choppy and it seems so glitchy, which is really weird. It might be faster. I know that phone is faster, but it just seems a little bit more glitchier. Where the SE, everything is smooth, everything is concise, which I really like. Once you're into the game or once you're into the apps, everything loads up pretty smoothly. Of course, heavy intensive gaming can be a little choppy here and there, but that's kind of a given. Now, and specifically with iOS 13, even 13.3, which I'm running it now, a lot of people wanted to say performance went down or battery life went down. I'll get into battery life in a second, but performance I think has been pretty much the same as iOS 12. I do think there's a couple more bugs and issues here and there, but I think the overall performance is about the same. I've tested every single iOS version on this phone since I've gotten it, and I think, like I stated, I think it's held up pretty well in terms of just performance. So I don't think iOS 13 inherently, bricked it or made it worse or anything like that in my use, but your use may vary. But in terms of overall performance, what I can tell you is I think the performance is actually pretty good still on this phone for the age and price. Maybe in the next couple months, if there's a huge iOS version that just totally messed up the performance, and I'll update you guys or something like that, but as of right now, I think the performance is actually pretty decent for this phone, and I'm actually pretty happy. It's definitely on the better side, and I think it's a little bit above average when you consider the price of this phone and the year of this phone was released, so that kind of covers that in terms of performance. Now, hitting on the camera, this thing has a single 12 megapixel camera. On the front, you have a 1.2 megapixel camera, and that back camera, you can do 4K at up to 30 frames, which is really cool, and you can even do 1080p at up to 120. Now, most people are probably not going to do 120 frames per second. Most people are probably not even going to use 4K. They're probably going to use 1080. But what I will tell you is that the camera quality itself is actually pretty good. Like I've stated, when you're taking photos, when you're taking videos, audio quality, all that stuff seems to be pretty good. The only issue, and I've said this about so many other phones, is that nowadays, especially going into 2020, the quality and the videos and all that stuff, that itself isn't really going to be a huge selling factor anymore. The biggest selling factor of phones is the extra camera sensors, and regardless of the quality, which is super important in my eyes, a lot of people would rather have more camera sensors and have more options than have the best single camera setup, because you can always do more with more cameras technically. And with the iPhone SEs and older iPhones, they only have single camera setups. So the quality and everything might be good, but the biggest deterrent is hardware. It doesn't have the extra telephoto or ultra-wide sensor. And when you're looking long term, that is something that's going to kind of keep you in the back end and kind of make you feel like you have a dated phone. The quality and everything I think is great, but really the main issue is the hardware, and that's something that a software update can't fix or anything like that. So I will tell you, in terms of overall camera quality, I think it's good, but like I said, you're kind of missing out on those hardware components, which is important to keep in mind. So moving on to the battery life, this thing has a 1624 mAh battery, and I actually do think that the iPhone SE's battery life even on iOS 13 is really, really good, as long as it's, not at 75% degraded health. As long as your battery health is decent on your phone, you're going to have pretty good battery life. It doesn't have a massively huge screen. It's not like completely overpowered, so you can really get, maybe more than one day on the iPhone SE, which is pretty impressive. On my second channel, I think I talked about the iPhone SE's battery life on iOS 12 and on iOS 13, and I mentioned that out of my iPhone 6, 6S, 7, and 8, the iPhone SE beat all those phones on iOS 12, and then with iOS 13, it still beat all those other phones that I mentioned that supported iOS 13, which is really, really cool. So that's a testament to the SE's battery life. Standby time is really great on it. I have like 3 iPhone SEs on me, and I really do like this battery life. It's pretty good. So that kind of covers it up in terms of battery life. And to answer the main question, is the iPhone SE still worth it in 2020? I will say, like I stated with other older phones, man, 100% yes. This phone is still completely worth it. It's one of the smallest, fastest iPhones that you can still buy right now. It's still supported with iOS. The performance is pretty good for a 2016 phone. Battery life is pretty good as well. It's cheap, so you can easily pick it up. If you break the screen or something like that, you can easily replace it. It's not a crazy phone to maintain, and I really do think that the iPhone SE still has a lot going for it, without a doubt. So if you want to pick up an iPhone SE, like I stated, the cheapest way to go is probably through eBay. If you sort by lowest prices, that's probably the cheapest way you can get it. However, I will find the cheapest one on Amazon and link it down in the description below, so you guys can get it from there and help support the channel at the same time. But that is pretty much it. If you guys have any other questions or anything, leave it down in the comment section as well. Hit that like button, that will mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count, so it'll mean so much if you guys could hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my second channel, all those links are linked down below. I'd really appreciate it if you guys could check it out. But more importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.